Hi everyone, welcome back to Young and Wiped Up. This is Marcella.
And I'm Gabby.
And thanks for joining us this week for another episode.
Before we get into today's topic, we have a few announcements for you guys. Thank you for your patience as we took the month off of May to take a break from our regular podcasting schedule. But we're going to get right back into things. We have 3 exciting episodes ready for you guys for June that you guys can look forward to. And if you would like to listen to the episodes a few days earlier than the general public, we would invite you guys to become a patron at any level, any tier. You get any of our publicly released episodes a couple days earlier than the public. So that's one of my favorite exclusive contents that we have for all of our patrons, but we also have a ton of other exclusive content, including bonus episodes. Marcella and I did a couple blog posts last month, and we have PDFs and like digital downloads, stuff for your homemaking, stuff for your productivity. We have a ton of stuff for you guys. So go ahead and check that out. And if you would like to join our free community, we also have that on our Facebook group, also called Young and Wiped Up. Another way that you can support us is by rating and reviewing our podcast on whatever platform you use to listen or watch our content. It helps us to become more visible. And I've been watching the Spotify stats recently, and I really appreciate all of the hard work that you guys have put in making sure that our episodes are visible by leaving a 5-star rating and leaving a review, because we have been showing up on the homepage and recommended pages on a ton of users' Spotify apps. So we appreciate everything that you guys do, and it helps us to become more visible and to grow our Young and Wiped Up community. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it on over to Marcella. She's going to be heading up today's episode, and I'm really excited for this topic that she's going to be discussing with you guys, and I hope that you are encouraged and edified by it.
Okay, so today I want to talk about feeding kids with grace. We're going to cover healthy habits when it comes to meal times, table time, maybe some tricks that might help you with feeding kids, and also we'll talk a little bit about picky eaters. So generally we'll, cover, balancing nourishing food, what the reality is going to look like with picky eaters. How do you handle that? As a Christian mother, we want our children to be obedient, but we also don't want to exasperate them. And also making space for fun treats without guilt when it comes to cooking for kids. So, when it comes to like general principles for meal times, we have a few simple rules in our household. And I wrote a few of them down. I might be missing 1 or 2 here, but this is generally, when I was thinking back, when we go to sit down for meals, this is usually what we remind the kids that, they have to do during meal times. The first one is that you're expected to use your manners, obviously. Please, thank you. They're always required to thank the chef, whoever cooked the food. Most nights it's me, but sometimes it is Jed. And then if we ever go to somebody's house, they're required to thank the host for hosting and for the meal that they served. And then the next one is that they must sit and eat at meal times. I've been to many households where this kind of like ebbs and flows. Like sometimes the kids have to sit down and eat. Sometimes they let them kind of roam around the house. I find that what works the best for our family is that it is required that they sit down at the table to eat. And I would say about 80% of the time that also applies to snacks as well, that they have to sit down at the table to eat their snacks too. And this honestly has a really nice secondary benefit that there are not as many crumbs and messes around the house. It's all kind of like contained around the table and in the kitchen area. So that is one of the rules that we have at the house. It really helps with the mess. It also helps to keep the kids focused on what we're supposed to be doing, which is eating food. And this can be hard. This requires quite a bit of discipline, especially with the wiggly 2 to 3 year old stage, because they get bored really easily. They get kind of sick of just eating the food and they're like, I'm ready to go play. But we do try to tell them, like, okay, the food is going to help fuel your body so that you have the energy to go play and that we have good attitudes because the Lord uses things like nutrition and water and all those things to help us do the things that we need to do during the day because it's all connected. Um, and then the next thing is that they are expected to, at the very least, try everything that is served to them. They are all pretty much never expected to finish every single little morsel that is on their plate. And it also depends on the age that they're at. We can kind of see if they're having a hard time, they're in like a where food is a little bit more difficult, meals are a little bit more difficult, and so sometimes really expecting a child to eat, to lick their plate is not always realistic, and I feel like it can a lot of times lead to just the parents being frustrated and then the child being frustrated, and you don't really end up accomplishing what you really want to accomplish. Another like foundational thing that would be helpful if you're running into, um, as far as like balancing the foods, like healthy foods and treats and things like that, is for you and your husband to decide together what healthy looks like in your home. For us, we like a lot of variety in our meals. I feel like this also wards off the picky eating. We eat like a lot of different cuisines. I try to cook a lot of different cuisines. Nutrient dense meals, making sure we have a routine. The setting of the tables. It even starts with before the meal starts, the setting of the table and then at the end, when they're done eating, clearing off their dishes, they know what's required of them. So there's that predictability in the routine as well. And then making peace with the imperfection and messiness in feeding, especially with babies and toddlers who explore with food. And this is another great deterrent from picky eating as well, is letting your kids to an extent play with their food. I don't think I would ever condone children throwing food across the room or anything like that. Usually, like Liam, for instance, our youngest, he's just over a year and a half. And he's been in this phase the past few months where if he doesn't like something, he will throw it on the floor. And he is not allowed to do that. Now, if he doesn't like something, if he tries it, which is fine, and he's like not a big fan, we just tell him just leave it on your plate or leave it on your high chair tray, set it off to the side, but you are not allowed to throw your food on the floor. And he gets disciplined because he knows that he's not supposed to be doing that. But when it comes to things like um, we have to make sure everything is nice and spick and span, and we're only spoon feeding everybody because we're trying to avoid as much mess as possible. I feel like that can create picky eaters because they explore with their mouths. Their mouths are like the part of their body that they use for sensory things the most to like explore their world. And so sometimes they've got to like smash the stuff and kind of spread it around, especially when they are first learning how to eat. And so we did an episode on baby led weaning a while ago. It's been
Mm-hmm.
a hot minute, I think,
Years.
since we talked about it. Yeah. And there have been some seasons in life where it's been like, okay, for a whole week all of the lunches I had to spoon feed the baby because I was like at my max at that point. But I knew that that wasn't going to be a permanent thing. It was just a for now when time is really tight and I don't have a lot of wiggle room for like cleaning up a bunch of messes, we're going to spoon feed to this meal and I'm going to help you out with this one with the yogurt parfait that I don't want half of it to end up all over the child. Like I need them to eat the whole meal. So the more that you come to terms with that and accept that it's going to be messy, but this is also what helps with balancing the meals, with deterring the picky eating, then the more you kind of see the big picture of it all, not necessarily the mess like right in front of you. Okay, so as far as treats go, how we handle treats, and not even just treats, because I feel like when we say treats, we think of like only sugar or whatever. But I would also consider foods that maybe if you're more like in crunchy circles, you would think are kind of like, oh, I don't know. I'm talking about things with like seed oils. I'm talking about things that maybe have artificial food dyes in them. That in my mind is also something that needs to be balanced as well. So banning treats, in my opinion, usually backfires. And this could be with sugar, it could be with so many different things. When our children are older, they are going to have to learn how to manage moderation with many different things, including food. And so our children, personally, are allowed to eat almost anything that they want within certain boundaries and limitations that are explained. And they are, we have the expectation that they're going to respect if we do say no to something. And so sometimes we do allow the artificial food dyes. Sometimes we do allow stuff that has seed oils in it. Um, and we don't ban things like sugar or stuff like that. We try to use treats as celebration and not necessarily like as bribery. Um, Although during meal times, generally, I would say we serve dessert maybe 3 times out of the week. It kind of depends. Maybe 3 to 4 times in a week. Um, and usually we can tell if a child is wanting to use dessert to fill up on, as opposed to it's something that's to be enjoyed after they have their regular dinner. Because if they're saying things like they have almost a whole plate of food in front of them, they're saying, "Oh, my tummy's getting full." And it's like, "Oh, okay, your tummy's getting full." But then they're like, "Can I have dessert?" And it's like, "Whoa, whoa. Hang on now. I thought you said you were full." And it's like they know that the general rule in our house is that you do have to have a pretty good portion of your dinner in order to have dessert, because we don't want to necessarily fill up on dessert, because for the most part dessert is not necessarily going to be like a nutritionally balanced meal. I think usually it's not supposed to be. um, and so that's why it's important, for our bodies to use the fuel of a nutritionally balanced meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is, before we like get to the sweets and stuff. Um, so they do know that that's like a general rule that we have, that we're expecting a certain amount of their food to be finished with. And then also modeling moderation and joy in eating as well. That we obviously are free to enjoy the things that the Lord has given us, including food and drink. And it even in Ecclesiastes 9:7, it says, "Enjoy thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God hath now accepted thy works." And so it's nice to have mealtime at the end of a day, with the family, and you have that table fellowship, and that we really do get to, you know, eat and drink and be merry with each other. And that is that's a biblical thing, and that we are to be grateful and to have good attitudes over the meal. And and so obviously that doesn't mean that we um are gluttons, or that we start to put food or drink over, relationships with each other, because sometimes, sometimes things will happen, and there may be a little squabble or something, over, and this isn't even just for food. I mean, even things like toys and you name it. We all know siblings are going to squabble over stuff, or even to have bad attitudes towards parents, and reminding them that the relationship that they have with their family members and the state of the fellowship that they're in with the other family members is more important than any toy or than any food or drink. That being at peace with each other is more important than those things. And so, again, enjoying in moderation. We're grateful. We have good attitudes. We always encourage that and praise that a lot. And then, as far as, again, going back to the treats, I try to find homemade versions and recipes as much as possible. So if I know that a family member has, this sounds so generic, but like this could, I mean, apply to my husband or to any of my three boys. If one of them really likes a certain thing, and I know generally like it doesn't have the best ingredients for them, I'm going to try to find something that's maybe a bit better for them, but still tastes great, and it's like still gonna like scratch that itch kind of, and like kick the craving, I guess, for what, whatever they really enjoy having. And a lot of the time, I do end up finding like a really good recipe. And that's a nice way to not just say you can't ever have that because I know what's in it. It's horrible for your body and it's going to do this, that, and the other. And obviously, we can explain to our kids that there are certain things that are not going to make us feel great if we eat them. And they're not going to be good for our bodies necessarily in excess. And so we have to be careful with certain things, that there's a reason why we don't have something, every single day, and it's only for every once in a while, and it's okay that it's for every once in a while. But finding the homemade versions has really helped a lot. And so I have been able to get through so many snack recipes, like making homemade gummies, fruit snacks, granola bars, crackers, like stuff that maybe you would be able to find in the store, and maybe it's like so expensive you just can't possibly justify buying like the really good like ingredient version of it. Making it yourself is probably going to be the most cost effective and probably the better answer to begin with. So I definitely encourage you guys to do that as well. But yeah, generally with treats, just going back and like recapping, we really don't ban anything with any of the kids. I think really the only things are like stuff that would be like a very clear choking hazard for like any
Yeah.
of the kids, but that's not necessarily like an ingredients kind of a thing, or like they're eating
Mhm.
something weird. That's just like a safety, more of a safety thing. And obviously this really only applies to like if you have children who can generally, their bodies can generally handle something well. If you are noticing a pattern of your kid is like acting like the behavior is completely different from them when they are consuming something very specific, then obviously
Mhm.
it would be for their betterment to not serve it anymore. And it
Right.
may be sad and disappointing, but you have to discern what's going on, what your game plan is going to be, and there may be a period where they can't eat that for a long time, and that also goes for allergies and stuff like that. I hope that goes without saying.
Mhm.
Um, So, yeah, that's kind of how we handle treats. There aren't necessarily things that we're just like, "You may never, ever, ever eat that." But there are definitely things that we do not have every single day. I do not buy them and keep them in the house, but sometimes if we're out and about, if we are socializing with other families or with friends or we're at family events or whatever, then in moderation, we allow pretty much everything. Okay. Okay, so when it comes to picky eating, if you are a new mom, maybe you're on your first kid, or maybe your first kid was like, they ate everything in sight, you never really had to worry, and then the second one comes along and it's like, "What's going on?" This one is not eating anything at all. Picky eating phases for kids are normal. I would not say, however, that a very long time of picky eating with certain things is necessarily normal. At that point, you may have to, like, explore reasons for the picky eating for being so long, that if you feel like it's been months and months and months of, dealing with the same issue, there may be something else at play. There may be some sensory issues going on. There may I know also, like, sometimes, like, motor functioning of, like, the mouth too can sometimes be a problem with kids with picky eating. So try to get that stuff out of the way to make sure that there's, like, actually not something going on with them, that they're
Right. Like
okay.
no like medical or like no medical reason why this is
Right.
happening.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
that is definitely possible, that could definitely be a
Mhm.
reason. And then I would go to, is this a sinful habit of picky eating? And I know that's very, like, kind of a taboo thing to say, that we don't wanna consider the option not, I think generally a lot of us would maybe agree with this. But for general public, I would say they would not consider picky eating to be something that's the child is doing wrong necessarily. Yeah. Um, so then it turns into, is this, rebellion of the heart? And is this something that needs to be addressed in that way instead, where, consequences need to be enacted or discipline or whatever? And obviously, you and your husband have to observe and make a decision and see what's going on. But when you are kind of going through, I would say, the more common phases of picky eating, which, I mean, it ebbs and flows so much. My my husband came, he's trying so hard to be quiet. Um,
I can't hear him, so
okay.
you're good.
So he's, like, running in and out of the room because the kids are coming out. Anyway, um, there have been so many times where I've had a child who did not like something, wanted nothing to do with a certain food one week, and then all of a sudden the next week they're totally into it. And then the next week they're off of it again. And then the next week they're on, and you're like, make up your mind. Do you like it or do you not? Because you, like, get to a point where you're like, okay, this is like, they'll eat this, I can serve them, like, a hefty portion of it, but then all of a sudden something just happens, and then they're just not into it anymore. And so the ebbs and flows are so normal, um, and I will say we have, I would say, probably 1, maybe 2 of the boys now are out of the picky eating phase. Our oldest is definitely out of it. He will eat pretty much anything you put in front of him. He's 5. And, there was a point, I think probably a year and a half, of a lot of ebbs and flows of picky eating. And before that, it was like he was a really good eater. He like again ate anything put in front of him, and then all of a sudden something like switched. And he was like, I don't like this. Like, I'm not into this. I'm not going to eat what you're putting in front of me. And so we like had to go through that with him. And now that we're kind of on the other side, we like hardly ever have to ever say anything to him about you need to, have a little bit more of this or have a little bit more of that. Because at this point we kind of know what he does or does not like, and even the foods that he says, he's not a really big fan of, he will still have a generally good portion of them. So during those times, and our 3-year-old is kind of starting to come out of that as well. And I feel like our 1.5-year-old is starting to enter it. So it's like we have one coming out and then another one coming in, and then like one definitely on the other side of it. So what has been helpful that I've found is one, no pressure exposure. And sometimes this comes in the form of letting them eat off of your prepping stuff. So if I'm
Mm.
prepping ingredients, let's say for instance, I'm chopping up bell peppers for a stir fry. I have a feeling they may not like it when I serve it for dinner, so I'm going to let them take a few sticks off of the cutting board to try. And it's fun because it's kind of like sneaky for them because it's like not a food that's served at the table and they're like walking around the house with it like, what, crazy, we don't have to sit at the table to eat this bell pepper. And to them it's like this like fun thing that they get to eat. And then when it's served later in the evening, it's like, this is what you had off the counter, and they're like, oh, okay, like, I liked it then, and okay, yeah, sure, like, I think I'll try this, because it's like they remember that they were eating it before and they enjoyed it. Also, like, making kind of along the same lines, taking some of those ingredients you kind of know they're not gonna be huge fans of, and I feel like generally, it's stuff that has, like, weird texture, or the veggies are hard too. The vegetables are hard. Making a little snack charcuterie board snack tray for them with some of those ingredients sprinkled in. That way they can try it. Snack times are very low key. You are not forced to finish all of your snacks. If you're hungry for a snack, you can have it. If not, it's fine. I'll probably end up eating whatever is left over, but that is a very low pressure situation, the snack times. And so sometimes prepping them mentally by serving the foods during snack time can also be helpful. You just throw a little bit, here and there. Here, try this. Or like, ooh, you want a little bite of this? Like while mommy's chopping up this stuff. The snack plate thing. Yeah. Those are always really great no pressure exposure situations. Um, the next thing that we have a general rule of is enacting the thank you bite rule, or the thank you portion. It kind of depends on what phase your kid is in. So that means if there's something on their plate that they do not like, they must take a thank you bite of the thing that they do not like. And that is just to show the person who cooked, thank you for cooking this, even though it's not my favorite and they're probably not going to finish the entire portion that you served them. They must take a thank you bite. And sometimes with the older ones who it's not going to exasperate them, they can handle a little bit more. I portion out a serving and say, you must finish this much. It's not necessarily going to be the whole portion, but if you want to be excused from the table, this is what you have to finish. So that's their thank you portion. And they're pretty much used to that routine now, and they know that that's, what mom and dad they're going to do. Another thing that's helpful is always offering at least one safe food during a meal. So this might be bread. I feel like a lot of the time it's bread for
Bread and
kids.
butter.
Bread and butter.
Yeah.
Serving that as a safe food. And this isn't I don't want to give you guys the impression that we're now doing, like, short order cooking because that's kind of my next point is to not give into short order cooking. But it's to keep your children's limitations in mind for meal times, and that you still want them to have a somewhat enjoyable experience with the family at the meal. And so if there's one thing that they have there that, they know that it's predictable, the texture and taste is predictable, serving that in a small portion or something for them to have is always really helpful as well. Okay, so the not giving into short order cooking. This is when you make a meal for your family, but you know that your picky eater is not going to want it, or you are like dreading that it's going to put up a fight. Your child's going to put up a fight about the meal, and so you go and make something separate for them because you just don't want to deal with the whining, you don't want to deal with the fighting or whatever. Don't do this. This is not going to be helpful in the long run. For one, it doesn't allow them to practice having the discipline of being uncomfortable eating something that doesn't taste great to them, because that is partly a discipline thing. Um, and also it kind of tells them that their picky eating habits can run mom around, and not necessarily the other way around. That this is what's served, this is what's on the menu tonight, this is what mom is serving. And obviously, don't be serving stuff that your kids hate 24/7, because then you are exasperating them. Um, and that if you feel like that's what's happening and you're like, I'm trying everything and you're genuinely trying, that's when I would go to, is there something deeper going on? And then you need to go into the other stuff. But yeah, the short order cooking, I don't think I have ever done that. I have, I never thought that that was a good idea. And honestly, it's really paying off because the kids know that what is served to them is what they're going to be eating. I'm not going to get up and make a whole new meal for them that they're wanting. Um, if they're asking for something during mealtime, or if they're like, can we have this instead? I'll tell them, like, okay, if you want that, I'm not going to serve that tonight, but I will put that on the menu for tomorrow or for the meal plan for next week, just to let them know I hear them. I want to um, honor them in a way as a part of the family and a part of the household, and that I want to listen to what they desire, and to give them those things and to give them those good things. But that's not going to happen right this moment because they want it right this moment. And so I do try to make sure that I consider that for the next day, or I'll tell them I will put it in my meal plan for the next week. And then it's something for them to look forward to. And then again, reiterating, but that's not what we're having today. This is what's on the menu for today. This is what's being served today. And this is what we're going to eat. And last but not least is to stay kind and calm. This can be really hard sometimes. When you feel like you're going through, there have been like a lot of instances of like a picky eating situation with a child, or maybe you're going through it with multiple children for various things, and it's a lot. Um, this is where keeping meal planning with kids in mind, because there's going to be a meal during the week at least, where they're going to love it and enjoy it, and it's going to be a little bit of a relief for you and the kids. And plus, like, it's good to make a habit out of generally keeping your husband and children in mind when you're serving meals during the week. That it's not just about whatever mom feels like cooking or whatever mom's tastes are. You have to consider everybody in the family. And sometimes kind of like having that reprieve of Okay, there's I know at least 1 or 2 meals in my week for my dinner plan. I have the ingredients to make something that the kids I know are going to enjoy. It's like a fail-safe option, and that is going to help give you some reprieve. And the frustration that can come along with the picky eating instances should really just point us back to our dependence and neediness on Christ, that we can't be strong enough to be kind and calm without the Lord, without the Holy Spirit's help, and ask for prayer. I know sometimes like it may seem like this is kind of a silly thing to be asking prayer for, but like honestly, at least like in my church community, like amongst the believers in our community, sometimes we get like, especially like those of us with little kids, we'll be sending each other messages of just like, this seems like such a small thing, but it's like it's not a small thing because it's something that, maybe you feel like is heavy on your heart. Maybe it's causing a lot of tension in the family. It's causing tension in a situation that you would normally love to be more joyful and to be more in fellowship with each other. And so asking for prayer, asking the Lord, to help you, to help your child, praying with your child about it as well, um, helping your child to pray themselves about when they feel like they're having a hard time with food, but staying kind and calm to the best of your abilities is what's gonna kind of push you towards the next phase with a little less frustration. And any situation like this, I mean, any hardship, honestly, is just a means of us being sanctified. And this includes the picky eating situations. And then, okay, one last like simple tip: involving kids in the cooking and shopping can also really help as well. I do find that my kids are more likely to have something kind of new and maybe a little bit more like avant-garde. I don't know, like something kind of out of the ordinary, like a meal that I wouldn't normally serve with ingredients that I wouldn't normally serve with flavors that they're not used to. If I involve them a little bit more in the prepping and cooking process of the meal, once they have it served to them, it's like, "Oh, those are the I don't know, the leeks that you helped me chop earlier," and it's like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that," and letting them taste a little bit here and there, obviously, if it's safe for them to eat something, like, let them try things as they're helping you, asking them, again, what they want for meals, "What do you guys wanna have for dinner?" About 90% of the time, my boys say pizza, and so we eat a lot of pizza around here, and, involving them with the shopping as well, with the grocery shopping, um, is also really helpful, to kind of fizzle out some of the tension during meal times. So, yeah, those are my general my general tips, balancing the treats, the picky eating. And just remember in Proverbs 31:27, it says that she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. So even in the little things like offering your kids nourishing food or showing patience during picky moments, you're watching over your home with love and diligence, even by doing those small things that nobody else sees, the Lord sees. And feeding is a part of discipleship, and that really does matter. So it is never, these things are never small because they really do add up to something big. So is there anything you wanted
Mhm.
to add on to anything that I said?
No, I really appreciated everything that you said, and I think, yeah, somebody that's not currently going through that now, 2 things that well, it's kind of like the same thing in different fleshing out in different ways, but, something that I appreciate about, like, the diligence of training children with food is that especially when you are raising boys who are going to be husbands, who are going to have wives that cook for them, you want to cultivate in them now gratitude for a woman's work in the kitchen, to
Mhm.
honor it, to cherish it, to lift it up. And because it is such a beautiful service, especially if you're cooking from scratch, that is a labor and that is hard
Mhm.
work. There's a lot that goes behind that. And I think that one way that we could help future homemakers and future women is to raise grateful boys that understand and that are that honor the work of a woman in the kitchen and the food. And so I really appreciate your emphasis on like gratitude and manners and honoring the person that is cooking, because you're
Mhm.
not just raising boys, you're raising future men and future husbands. And so that's like
Mhm.
more with like particularly with boys. Now with both genders, when you are going outside of your home and you're going to eat somewhere else, like at a fellowship meal or you were invited to somebody's home, as somebody that hosts families often in my house, I always appreciate when families are doing the hard work at home to take care of this stuff, that I know when they come and eat in my home that their children are grateful and that they are eating and that I don't have to worry about making sure these certain kids that won't eat anything I cook, I have to figure out something for them. And so as
Mhm.
somebody that hosts children often, I always appreciate the hard work of the parents that they are able to eat in my home and be grateful for the food that I'm making for them when I'm hosting them. So as somebody that's kind of on the outside of things, those are two things that I notice and I appreciate and I think about when it comes to um, discipling children with eating habits and stuff like that. And I do also appreciate just one little last thing that like there are, like you said, the exceptions. I do think that they are more rare than common, that there are exceptions with like neurodivergence or like genuinely like a medical issue that could be coming into play that can make things more difficult. And I know that there are listeners that we have that have these unique situations and they could say, well, Marcella, that's all great, but you have neurotypical children or children with no medical complexities. But she's talking more to, the general, the
Mhm.
average mom with children that do not have medically complicated situations or neurodivergency. And even with that, like in their own capacity, even if you are dealing with a complex child or a unique situation, that we are still teaching them in the ways that they are able to be obedient, to be grateful, and to expect more of them. And I think people that expect more of their children and hold them to a godly standard, even if there are these like nuances and difficult circumstances, that God will bless and honor the efforts of the parents.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, what was I gonna say? Um, yeah, when it comes to like the nuanced situations, you and your husband have to do your due diligence
Mhm.
of determining what's actually going on. That's why I was saying go through, a checklist of things to make sure that you are not expecting something of your child that then you are putting a burden on them that they cannot bear of,
Mhm.
well, now I'm being disobedient to my parents because they're asking something of me that I can't necessarily
Mhm.
fulfill. And so doing your due diligence of making sure there isn't something, a unique situation going on and that your child, is okay. But then once once you can get all of that kind of parsed out, then you have to move on to the next phase of, okay,
Mhm.
then is this really just outright disobedience, and what do we do in those situations? And I think parents, especially just because of like the things that we see on social media, we're so afraid of creating children who have a bill who or creating future adults who will have a bad relationship with food,
Mhm.
because that's like a very trendy thing right now, is like, what is your relationship with food, sort of a thing. But there definitely has to be a balance to it. And so yeah,
Yeah, and
talking
we
with
have
your
to
husband
view
about exactly
view
what it was like.
anything with the biblical worldview, and I do think that
Yeah.
there are principles that it's like food is not necessarily as neutral as the world makes it seem.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
like all that is good and true is the Lord's, and we should, like you said in the beginning, eat with a merry and happy heart and with joy, because God made food not just to nourish us, but to taste amazing, and it's
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
pleasure, not just fuel. And so I do think the more that we have these conversations and work through these things with a biblical worldview, although I appreciate things like the intuitive eating movement, and I appreciate things like, you know, um, not using food as a threat or a punishment, that sort of thing. But I do
Mhm.
still think that there are healthy principles, biblical principles, and good expectations that do create future adults that will have gratitude,
Mhm.
and yeah. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. Just like as a last encouragement, um, for me personally, like there were a few things that I never enjoyed as a kid. I never enjoyed them even in my teen years. But then when they say that, like, your tastes change as you become an adult, it really is true. So,
Mhm.
I don't want you to be just so discouraged that, like, well, I have a 15-year-old who hates this food that would be really great for him, and, like, if he was more inclined to have it, you never know. Don't
Mhm.
ever think that, "Well, my child is doomed to a lifetime of not being able to eat this really nutritious food," because you never know, things could change. Like, there was a time where, I mean, years and years and years, I hated eggs. I hated eggs. I could not do
Mhm.
eggs, and my mom served them all the time for breakfast, and you know what? She should have. She was doing what she was supposed to do. She was making sure we had our protein in the morning, but I hated eggs for the longest time, and then I became an adult, and, now I love eggs, and my day is not right unless I have eggs.
Oh yeah, same.
And so you just never know. And so I want you to be encouraged that if you're like going through something with a child where they're just refusing food that you're like, oh, it would be so, great for them and it's nutritious, and you know, you never know. Things may change. They may struggle with a certain type of food for many, many years, and then the Lord will have mercy on them and things will
Mhm.
turn around. You just never know. So don't be discouraged. And I'm sure pro- most of us as adults can think of things that we did not like as kids, but now we love as adults, or that we're totally fine with eating. And it really didn't affect us very much. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marcella, for sharing your heart and your thoughts and your advice. And we hope that you were, as listeners, encouraged by today's episode. And please, especially if you're a patron or or you're on our Facebook group and you want to ask Marcella specific questions or want her to clarify something, or you just want to discuss this topic further, please feel free to leave a comment on Patreon. And also, I know Spotify has a comment section as well that we can also reply to, and also on the Facebook group. So we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will talk to you next week. We're going to have another food topic because we just love food, love the kitchen, and it's always on our minds. It's the biggest part of our lives. Okay, guys, we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.